the most obvious thing to say about Fences is that when I watched it, and I didn't know the stage play, you'd seen the stage play with Lenny Henry, and I imagine that it is a really brilliant and really powerful stage play because it is a terrific piece of writing. About 30 seconds into it, I knew that what I was watching was an adaptation of a stage play. And I have to say right off the bat that one of the problems with the film is that it is very stagey. And there is always a question when you adapt a stage play for the screen, whether what you're doing is making a movie or whether what you're doing is making a kind of, a cinematic record of a stage play. And I have to confess that I don't feel that Fences ever overcame the problem of being a stage play moved to the cinema. Even if you didn't know the play, which I didn't, it felt like I was watching something which was a theatrical adaptation. It also made me think, I really want to be watching this in the theatre, because when, for example, in that interview, he's talking about there are 17 pages of dialogue with interjections, admittedly, but there is a lot of it, which is what I felt was watching it. I want to be in the theatrical space experiencing this. I want to actually be having that performance delivered to me without the sort of intermediary of cinema, because the two mediums are different. They're absolutely different, and different things work cinematically than do theatrically. And if you look back to, for example, James Foley has got a film out this week. James Foley famously directed the cinematic adaptation of Glengarry Glen Ross, and I thought that he did a brilliant job with that. And there are certainly times in which we've seen things from different source materials in which what they are is completely cinematic. In the case of Moonlight, which you mentioned, which I think instantly is a brilliant film, that has its roots in a sort of experimental theatrical production, but it is absolutely a piece of cinema. First and foremost, it is a piece of cinema. In the case of Fences, it is first and foremost a stage play that has been, put onto the screen, and I do think that that's a failing. Now, that said, there are many things about it that are hugely impressive. Firstly, the conviction of the cast, the performances of the cast are universally across the board really, really top notch. I think that Viola Davis has got a very strong chance of winning, and it would be a deserved win because she's
fantastic.
She is. And what makes her performance so fantastic is that around the central character of Troy, who is so garrulous, so outspoken, so much the master of his own home, where he brings back all his resentments about work, about the things that didn't work out for him in his youth, the way in which he tries to impose his dreams on his children, all those things mean that he is a very, very outspoken character. And a lot of what she's doing is a lot more complicated than that. I mean, when he was talking about, there's a moment when she gets the big, but actually what's brilliant about her performance is the reactions. It's the looks, it's the glances, it's the listening. Her performance is really terrific. I mean, it is, and it's often in those quieter moments, those moments that are not to do with, the sort of theatrical projection, that the film really finds its feet. And so I think that what you get is something which is, it's very, very handsomely made. It's clearly made with, love and integrity and all those things. And the performances are very solid. But they did, it did feel to me like a theatre production on screen, except for those moments when, in its quiet moments, when it becomes more cinematic. And it's interesting that the quieter it becomes, the more cinematic it becomes. The louder it becomes, the more theatrical it becomes. And so you end up watching something that feels like it's pulling in two different directions. So as a piece of writing, it's great and insightful. As a piece of performance, it's absolutely solidly done with a couple of outstanding performances. As a piece of cinema, I think it doesn't overcome the transition from one medium to another. It feels very reverential about the stage play. Obviously, it's a posthumous nomination for the screenplay, and I don't know how much the screenplay was completely completed and how much they may have sort of polished him, but it does feel like it's a reverential adaptation of something from a different medium that hasn't successfully made the jump to cinema.
Well, you heard in the interview that the reverence with which he is held, August Wilson is held in respect by Denzel Washington.
Yeah, well, and
African-American Shakespeare.
And rightly so.
So maybe they just thought, as you just said, maybe we can't really mess around too much with his screenplay.
No, and I understand that entirely, but I think that what that does do is it makes the cinematic side of Fences muted. it makes it feel like it's kind of having a battle with its format, which is strange and is something that you notice more when the performances are as good as they are, when the writing is as good as it is, when the subject matter is as involving as it is. That last thing about it being cinematic, you do notice the absence, because it's a lot of things, but cinematic isn't one of them.